Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I was browsing through GameStop a few days ago to see if they had any new Nintendo DS cartridges I could trade for. I've been collecting them for years now, and trading is the best way to expand my collection without spending too much money. I found something I wanted, but the employees were busy in the back doing inventory, so I kept looking at the games on the walls. I should mention that I wear a lot of black. Black jeans, black t-shirts, black hoodies, it's just my style. Because of this, people often mistake me for an employee at certain stores. GameStop employees wear black shirts, so it happens there a lot. While I was browsing, an elderly couple walked in looking lost. The store can be overwhelming if you don't know gaming. They saw me and walked over. The elderly woman asked if I could help them. I turned around, and they told me their story. Their daughter had died, and they had just gotten custody of their 3 grandchildren. Their daughter's ex-husband, the kid's father, had been abusive. During the custody case, he got angry and broke the children's gaming system and all their games. The elderly man told me they wanted to get their grandchildren a new system as a welcome home present. He said the kids had been through a lot and they knew the children liked playing games. The elderly woman said they didn't know anything about video games and were confused by all the different types. I wanted to help them after hearing their story. I'm a big nerd, and thinking about those kids losing their mom and their games made me sad. I told them I'd help figure out what would work for their grandkids and asked how old the children were. The elderly woman said the youngest was 7, the middle was 10, and the oldest had just turned 13. I explained the different gaming systems, the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X. I went through what was good and bad about each one, which had kid-friendly games, and which ones let kids play online with friends. I suggested the Switch was probably best for families. I explained it had games everyone could enjoy, and they could play together too. I showed them multiplayer games good for siblings, and some educational ones. I explained how these systems connect to the internet so kids can play with friends. I told them all systems have parental controls to monitor who the children talk to and how long they play. The couple listened and asked good questions. I could tell they really wanted to get something their grandkids would love. The elderly man asked if the games on display were okay for children their age. I explained the rating system and helped them pick games for different ages. I suggested Mario Kart, Minecraft, and other games all 3 kids could play together. We spent about 10 minutes going through everything. They were nice and seemed to appreciate my help. When we went to the counter, a GameStop employee had come out to work the register. The elderly couple put their items on the counter, a Nintendo Switch with 3 controllers and about 5 games. The elderly woman told the employee I was helpful and knew a lot about games. The employee looked at me confused, then looked back at the couple. He told them I didn't work there. The couple looked at me, shocked and embarrassed. The elderly woman said sorry, they had just assumed I worked there. I told them it was fine and I was happy to help. The elderly man said I knew my video games and their grandkids would like what they picked. The employee asked if I had really helped them choose everything. He looked impressed while checking their selections. I said I was just a gamer who wears a lot of black. We laughed and the employee thanked me for helping while he was busy. He gave me a discount on the DS game I wanted to buy. As the elderly couple was leaving, the grandmother came back and gave me $20. She said it was for my time, and I had made things easier for them. I tried to say no, but she insisted. So I suggested they use the money for an online subscription for the Switch, so the kids could play with friends. They thanked me again, and the employee helped them set up the subscription. When they left, I felt good about what happened. Those kids had been through bad times, but they had great grandparents who cared enough to learn about something new to make their grandkids happy. The employee and I talked about games for another 20 minutes before I left. This happened to me a few years back during a cold winter night in Warwickshire, England. I was out with a group of friends for a pub crawl. If you're not familiar with the concept, It's basically where you go from one pub to another, having a drink at each stop. It's a pretty common social activity in England, especially on weekends. Our group had just finished our drinks at this quaint little pub in town. It was getting late, and we were ready to move on to the next spot. Most of my friends had rushed inside to use the bathroom before we left, leaving just me and my buddy standing outside in front of the establishment. It was freezing that night. The kind of cold that cuts right through you and makes your teeth chatter. Both of us were wearing these long black coats to keep warm, huddled near the entrance, stamping our feet occasionally to keep the blood flowing. While we were waiting, a police car pulled up alongside us, the driver's window rolling down to reveal two police officers inside. The one driving was a female officer, probably in her mid-20s. The female officer asked us if everything was all right and how it was looking inside the pub. I was taken aback by the question. I looked over my shoulder thinking she must be talking to someone else, but there was no one else around. Just me and my friend in our long black coats. I stammered and asked her to repeat what she'd said. The officer then asked if the pub was busy and how many people we had in that night. That's when it hit me. This police officer thought we were security guards or bouncers for the pub. It was probably our black coats and the fact that we were standing outside the entrance that gave her that impression. I told her that we didn't work there and were just waiting for our friends. I expected her to apologize for the misunderstanding or at least admit her mistake, but what happened next was even more baffling. The officer laughed and said, I was quite the joker. She said she didn't work as a police officer either and had just stolen the police car and uniform. She then told us to stay safe, call if we needed them, and said goodbye. And with that, they drove off, leaving us standing there confused. My buddy and I looked at each other, mouths open. Did a police officer just refuse to believe we weren't security guards? I asked my buddy if what I thought had happened actually did happen. My buddy said yes, the officer did think we were security guards and wouldn't believe otherwise. We burst into laughter. The whole situation was so absurd that we couldn't help ourselves. Here we were, just two blokes waiting for our friends, and somehow we made a police officer think we were security guards in denial. I asked my buddy if we really looked like we worked security. He said it must be our coats that made us look official. When our friends finally came out of the pub, they found us still laughing. One friend asked what was so funny. My buddy told them they wouldn't believe what had just happened. We told the story to our friends, who found it just as funny. One of them said we should have played along with it. Another friend said we should have told the officer there was a troublemaker inside that needed to be dealt with. A third friend said we could have asked if she could help us throw out a rowdy customer. The whole group was laughing as we made our way to the next pub on our crawl. For the rest of the night, our friends kept making jokes about us being undercover security, asking us if we needed to check IDs before they could enter the next pub. My buddy said next time he would bring a clipboard and an earpiece to really sell the bouncer look. Another friend said we could get some official-looking badges too. What makes the encounter even stranger is that the officer was so sure that we were security that she thought we were joking when we denied it. She even made a joke about stealing her police car and uniform, as if to say, yeah, right, and I'm not really a cop. I've often wondered what would have happened if we'd just played along. Would she have believed us then? Or was she just having a bit of fun with what she thought were fellow public servants on a cold night? The whole experience became a running joke among our friend group. Whenever we'd go out, someone would ask if the security team was ready. And for months afterward, whenever we'd see a police car, one of us would say, "Quick, act like bouncers." I should start with some backstory about myself. I'm a 6'3" guy, a bit on the heavier side at 350 pounds, though most people don't think I look that big. I work at a place that's basically the sister company to Walmart. We wear very similar colored vests, just with different logos. That day, I was wearing black shorts, a silver hat, and a dark blue polo shirt along with my work vest. It was around 9:30 p.m. and I'd just gotten off work when my girlfriend called. She told me we needed milk and some other items, though honestly, I only remembered the milk by the time I left the store. I pulled into a parking spot at Walmart and got out of my vehicle when I heard a faint voice asking if I could help. Not thinking it was directed at me, I ignored it. First mistake. Halfway to the entrance, I realized I was still wearing my work vest from my job. Second mistake. I quickly turned around and put the vest in my truck, hearing a more agitated voice calling out to me. Once again, I thought nothing of it. Third mistake. I entered the store and went about my shopping. About 10 minutes later, I was standing by the flower wall with milk in hand, trying to decide whether to buy my girlfriend some roses before heading out. I would do anything for that woman. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my side and left leg. I stumbled sideways and almost fell over. Someone had intentionally rammed me with their cart. I turned to the person, completely furious at this point. Just so you know, I'm normally very non-confrontational and try to avoid any sort of conflict if possible. I started to yell out, but before I could finish, she cut me off. This lady had the trademark Karen hairdo, long acrylic nails, a designer purse, looked to be in her mid to late 40s, and was about 5 feet 5 inches. She immediately launched into a tirade, screaming about how disrespectful and rude I was. She kept emphasizing that she was a paying customer and that I had ignored her calls for help in the parking lot. She threatened to have my job and told me to come with her to see my manager. She then grabbed my arm and tried to drag me to the nearest manager. Watching a 5'5" woman try to drag a 6'3" full-grown man like a little kid was funny, but I was mad. I snatched my arm away from her and yelled back. I told her I didn't care who she thought she was and that I didn't work there. I also asked what gave her the right to physically assault someone when she didn't get what she wanted, calling her an entitled witch. When we were yelling, I heard some running footsteps and around a corner came an employee. The employee asked what was going on. Karen put on a smug smile and told a lie, claiming I was an employee who had ignored her and physically assaulted her when she asked for help. She told the manager she wanted me fired. I told her she was lying, saying she was the one doing the assaulting and that I never laid a hand on her. I told her again that I didn't work there. The employee ran to get the manager while Karen kept attacking me. She was angry at how I was talking to her and asked if I spoke to my mother with such a disgusting mouth. I told her that yes, I did speak to my mother like that and that she loved me very much, unlike what her family probably felt about her given her attitude. Karen let out a scream and threatened me, asking if I knew who she was and saying she would make sure I never worked in this town again. I told her I'd already made it clear I didn't care who she was and that she was lucky I hadn't called the police on her for assault yet. Then the employee and manager came running around the corner. The manager asked what the problem was. Karen told him she was just shopping when I, supposedly an employee, assaulted her and started yelling. She told him to fire me. I was frustrated and told her slowly and clearly that I did not work there. I turned to the manager and told him that Karen was spreading lies. I told him she was the one who assaulted me. I lifted my shirt to show the marks that were left by her cart on my side and left calf, which was developing a bruise. Karen told everyone no one wanted to see my fat body and asked who would love someone like me. This witch resorted to fat shaming me. She went there. I will be proud of what I said next till the day I die. I have no idea who this woman is or if she has a daughter or not, but my comeback shut her up. I told her that her daughter seemed to like calling me. The employee was impressed while the manager told them to stop. The manager then told me I needed to stop before he escorted me out of the building. I said I understood. The manager told Karen that I didn't work for Walmart. Karen refused to accept this, insisting she'd seen me get out of my truck with a blue vest on and telling him to fire me. The manager told her again that I didn't work there and that he'd never seen me before. Karen threatened to contact corporate about both me and the manager who was defending me. The manager asked her to leave the store. Karen scoffed and walked out. The manager said sorry to me for the trouble and asked if I wanted them to call the police so I could file a report. I was thinking about pressing charges for assault, but I was tired and wanted to go home. I didn't want to go through the whole court process, so I let it go, paid for my milk, and went home. That wasn't my first Karen encounter and probably won't be the last either. I hope that I would never run into that woman again. The bruise on my leg was more of a mark from where the cart hit me. The bruise didn't show until later. Update. So I never thought that I would have run into Karen again so soon, but I did 2 days ago. It was about 2 p.m. and I was having an okay day, but that quickly changed when I got a call from my supervisor. He told me there was an upset customer looking for me. Since I deal with difficult customers daily, I told him to send them over. 4 minutes later, the door opened, but I didn't hear it because I had my head in the steel pulling the merchandise forward. I heard a voice that sent a shiver up my spine. It was Karen saying hello and that she now knew my name. I backed out, turned, and to my horror there she was. I greeted her and asked if there was anything I could help her with. She said no while saying my name slowly, like she was trying to remember it. Then she told me I had a mess to clean up. I asked what she meant. She grabbed 2 nearby bottles and slammed them onto the floor, smashing them and spraying alcohol everywhere. She told me to clean up the mess she'd made and called me a lowly servant of society. I had enough and told her she needed to leave the store. She slapped me hard, yelling about how the customer is always right and telling me to clean up the mess. Her acrylic nails scratched my cheek, drawing blood. She was smiling the whole time, which made me angry. I walked toward the cashier register, telling her that customers aren't always right. In fact, they're wrong 95% of the time. I have a silent alarm button that calls law enforcement when pressed. I reached the register, hit the button, then stood up only to be slapped again. I started to complain about the pain when she cut me off. She threatened to tell my manager that I had thrown the bottles at her if I didn't clean up the mess. She went on about how customer service jobs exist so people like me have to serve people like her. I was so angry, I wanted to hit her back. Though I believe men shouldn't hit women, I was close to making an exception after being slapped twice. Still, I didn't hit her. I told her to get off her high horse and save her entitled attitude for someone who might want to please her. I looked outside and saw 2 police cars arriving. I radioed my manager, using our code for a problem in the liquor department. He said he was coming. Karen noticed the police cars and asked what I'd done. I told her I was doing something I should have done when we first met. 2 cops entered, followed by my manager. One officer asked what was happening. I started to explain, but Karen spoke over me. She told a lie, claiming I was refusing to serve her, had tried to assault her, and had thrown bottles at her. She told everyone I should be fired. I asked about her mental state, and my manager asked if her claims about me throwing bottles were true. I started to say no when Karen spoke over me again, insisting I had done it, and saying again that I should be fired. I asked the officers if one of them could remove her so I could give my statement peacefully. Karen got angry at being called a banshee and slapped me a 3rd time right in front of the police. They took action as she kept fighting, knocking over 4 more bottles. They put her in the back of a police car. When one officer returned, he told me they'd arrested her for assaulting me, assaulting an officer, and causing a disturbance. He asked if I wanted to press charges, and I said yes. I added that my manager would be happy to provide the security camera footage of the incident. My manager nodded. I gave my statement, and the officer reviewed the security footage. 2 days later, the officer came to my door to tell me of my court date in late November. Final update. Everything was resolved yesterday, and I feel great. Here's the finale to this story. I had to miss work for my court date, but I was ready to never see this woman again. I arrived prepared with evidence and statements from multiple Walmart witnesses from that first night. Getting all this evidence had been difficult, but worth it. I entered the courtroom in a suit and tie and sat where they told me. Soon after, Karen entered with a police escort. When she spotted me across the room, she glared at me. Everyone stood for the judge. After we sat, the judge announced that court was in session for an assault case. He asked if there was evidence. I asked permission to present my evidence, which the judge granted. I handed over my notebook and flash drive to the officer, who passed them to the judge. As the judge reviewed my notes, he told the officer to set up the projector for the video evidence. We all watched the footage, which clearly showed Karen assaulting me. Afterwards, the judge asked Karen's lawyer if the defense had anything to say. Before her lawyer could speak, Karen yelled a new claim, saying that I had sexually assaulted her. The judge asked if she had any evidence to support this serious claim. She said she didn't. The judge told her the claim was overruled, but before he could continue, Karen asked what overruled meant and asked if he knew who she was. The judge called for order, but Karen continued, saying she was the wife of a big company owner. The judge had to call for order again. When Karen finally quieted down, he warned that another outburst would result in the maximum sentence. Karen nodded. The judge then gave his verdict. Karen was sentenced to 4 years in prison plus 2 years of probation. He also ordered her to take anger management classes after her prison term and told her to never contact me again. With that, court was dismissed. I used to have a rough past. Drug use was a big part of my life and it led me down some dark paths. Possession charges, retail theft, you name it. Not my proudest moments, but that was the reality I was living in. This one day, I was high as hell and went into Kohl's. Don't ask me why, but I decided to steal a belt. Yes, a belt. Nothing expensive or fancy, just a regular belt. Looking back, it was a waste of time and energy, but when you're high, your decision-making isn't exactly top-notch. So I put on this belt and just walked right out of the store, thinking I was being slick. I wasn't. A loss prevention officer approached me in the parking lot. She told me I needed to come back into the store with her. I didn't argue or run. I just followed her back inside and she took me to their little office. I took off the belt and handed it over. The loss prevention officer asked to see my ID. I told her I didn't have it on me and that it was in my car. She looked skeptical, but I was telling the truth. At that point, I just decided I didn't want to deal with this. I stood up from the chair and walked toward the door. The loss prevention officer begged me to stay and come back, but I ignored her and just kept walking. Made it to my car and drove away. I figured I'd probably get a theft charge at some point, but whatever, I dealt with worse. About 6 months later, my wife and I were planning to move to a new place. I thought it would be smart to check if I had any outstanding warrants before we changed addresses. I was mostly curious if they ever filed charges for that stupid belt. So I called the sheriff's department. I introduced myself and asked if I had any outstanding warrants. The clerk asked for my name and date of birth. I gave her my information and waited while she checked the system. She told me that I had 2 warrants, but they weren't for theft. They were for misdemeanor battery. I was shocked and told her that was impossible since I hadn't been in any fights. That's when it hit me, the Kohl's incident. The loss prevention officer must have claimed I pushed or touched her when I left, which was not true. I never laid a hand on her. I called my lawyer, who set up an arrangement with the prosecutor. The plan was for me to turn myself in on the morning of my court date, between 3 and 4 a.m. The judge wanted me processed in the system before appearing in court. Then I'd get my bond set and be able to bail out right away. The court date fell in mid-January in Illinois. If you've ever felt an Illinois winter, you know it's brutally cold. My wife drove me to the county jail around 4 a.m. and I rang the doorbell at the entrance. They buzzed me in and an officer met me in the lobby. He asked what brought me there. I said that I was turning myself in on a warrant and that my lawyer had arranged it with the prosecutor. I told him I was supposed to be processed before court that morning. This is where things got weird. The officer started trying to convince me not to turn myself in. This was a $50,000 warrant, and he was doing everything he could to make me leave. He claimed they didn't have enough staff to process me right then. I pointed out that I thought it only took one person. He then mentioned that the floor in the holding cell was really cold and I'd be uncomfortable. I told him I could handle it. Then he warned that I'd be waiting for hours and wouldn't be able to sleep. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen. This officer was actively discouraging me from turning myself in on a warrant. My wife was sitting there watching the whole thing, and thankfully the lobby had video and audio recording. Otherwise, no one would believe this story. I gave up and went home. I figured I'd just go straight to court in the morning. When I arrived at court, my lawyer looked confused. She asked why I didn't turn myself in as planned. I explained what happened with the officer, and she told the judge and prosecutor. They were livid. They asked for the officer's name, which I had made sure to write down, and called his supervisor to the courtroom right away. This wasn't the first issue they'd had with this officer. My incident was just the last straw. About a week later, he ended up getting suspended from his job. As for my case, the prosecutor looked into the battery charges and found they were completely made up. The loss prevention officer had lied about me pushing her, probably because she was embarrassed I had walked out so easily. The charges were dropped, so in the end, I didn't have to pay for the belt I tried to steal. The officer who tried to prevent me from turning myself in got what was coming to him, and the false charges against me were dismissed. A happy ending all around. These days, I'm clean and living a much better life. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.